Welcome to another Vahrenberg Implement Basics video. Today we're going to be discussing loaders. And today we have here the L135E that is mounted on a 2700 E-Series tractor. And we're also going to use the DL135 that is mounted on our 1700 Premium Series tractor here. This is a 1759. Show you some differences and show you some ways to learn how loaders work and operate, and how to determine and compare loaders based on specifications. The first thing you have to know is some basic understanding. Breakout force. Breakout force is the amount of energy it can lift when it leaves the ground and comes up. We're going to use our AGCO parts 2.5 gallon jugs here, and I'm going to be your loader. Loaders is basically like lifting weights. Breakout force is the amount of energy or amount that I can lift off the ground. So that is your breakout force. Same thing, the loader lifting off the ground or off the ground. That is the measure that you're going to learn when you look at breakout force. There's basically 3 different stages of loader operation. Stage 1, or stage A that I like to call it, is just like a human doing the squat. You can sit here and you can lift a lot more weight squatting than you can taking it all the way up. Show you stage A. What I consider on a loader is getting that load off the ground. You'll be able to lift more lifting capacity in that area. It's a good, safe area to carry a heavy load. You can carry a lot more lower to the ground than you can coming up. Stage B is where we go from the squat on up to the next area. This is going to take a lot more force to raise that loader. Show you on the tractor. Now we're lifting something. We're getting a lot higher. We're getting up here above the hood. That is what I call stage B. That's that loader trying to take that weight from here and pulling it up to here. You'll start watching the cylinders. You'll watch as the cylinder is starting to try to push this load upwards. Stage 3 of the loader lift capacity. This is the hardest lift. Squatting's easy, pulling to here. Now the next step is taking the load above your head. This is the hardest part if you lift weight. And the same thing with the loader is pushing that load straight up in the air for victory. Remember, there's 3 stages to loader lift, just like there's 3 stages to lifting weight. So we're going to take these loaders to maximum lift height, and then we'll discuss some more. Never walk under a loader that's up in the air because it can't crush it. Never walk under a loader that's in the air If something happens to the hydraulics, it can come down and crush you, even if you're working on the hood. If you're going to be under the loader, you need to safely secure it by putting an angle or a cylinder stop underneath the loader. It's very dangerous. So what we've got now is we've just taken these loaders to the third stage and basically maximum lift. So I'm going to go in here, we're going to set up the camera next to the DL135, and I'm going to explain all three stages as the loader comes up. You can better understand, but I hope this helps you. Squat is lifting the load off the ground. Bring it up to here is stage 2, and stage 3 is the toughest part of it. So when you're looking at loaders, it's easy to bring it up off the ground. The thing is, loader manufacturers don't rate at different points. That's where your research and understanding have to come in. Everybody rates a maximum lift height, and there is a discrepancy there, and we're going to watch this cylinder through this 3 different stages. This is breakout force is right there. Stage A is your squat. It's picking up more this way. The cylinder has more force as it's pulling this way. When you get above the hood, it's like pulling up to your chin, that load. And you watch now, this loader is trying to push that load, that cylinder is trying to push straight up to lift that load. That is just like taking the load over your head. That's the understanding of hydraulics, physics, geometry, all that stuff comes into effect when understanding loaders. So there's more to a loader than just lifting a load and the weight and everything, and we want to discuss the next stage. The next step is where is the maximum lift capacity rated at. Some manufacturers rate at the pivot pin. This is the pivot pin right here where the arm comes down and where this load is. That dimension is your pivot pin. Some manufacturers rate 19.5 inches forward, which that's going to be about the front edge of the bucket. It's easier to lift at this point than that point. So if you're looking at maximum lift capacities and you're measuring one at pivot pin and one at 19.5 inches forward, which one's going to have the lower value? You guessed it, out here at the front edge of the bucket, the 19.5 inches forward. The reason they do that gives you more true reading of the bucket lift capacity. It's the same thing as trying to pick up a load out here on your fingertips or trying to carry it in here. Your pivot pin versus your 19.5 inches forward rating, pivot pin would be like holding the load in here. The 19.5 inches forward would be like trying to lift out here. A lot harder to lift out here than it is in here to hold the weight. Just grab your weight, put your hands out like this and see if this is heavier or when you're holding it against your body. That's pivot pin versus front bucket edge. So make sure you compare equal specs when you're comparing loaders and loader operation. The next thing, all loaders are rated at maximum lift height. Not every loader raises the same lift height. So that loader's got to be all the way up there. The higher it lifts, the less it's going to lift. Basic physics, basic geometry. You cannot lift more the higher you go. Just like I showed you, just like a weightlifter. The higher he lifts, the less he can lift. So you need to compare loader lifting heights and lift capacity in unison together. For example, we have one loader, we have two loaders per se. One that can lift 90 inches and one that can lift 100 inches. And if they both can lift 1,000 pounds, which one can lift more? Correct. The one that lifts 100 inches actually lifts more at 90 inches because it can take that 1,000-pound load to 100 inches. It went 10 inches higher with the same amount of weight. So when you're comparing loaders, make sure you're comparing lift height and lift capacity, and at what point to lift capacity. Pivot pin or bucket edge at 19.5 inches forward. As you can see here, this tractor has a pin-on bucket. Pin-on bucket's probably going to lift more than a skid steer quick attach because the load is closer to that pivot pin, and it's going to increase the amount it can lift. There's another factor that comes in on loaders. If you look at this loader, the bucket cylinder is attached directly to the bucket. The lower arm is connected directly to the bucket. If you add skid steer, these pieces are still going to connect to the skid steer, and let's go show you that real quick. This is the exact L135 loader, but it has skid steer quick attach. Here's our pivot pin. We've moved that distance forward probably 6 inches there, so we're getting that weight shifted a little farther forward. You're going to reduce your loader lifting capacity. There's another thing. It's called bucket linkage. Our DL series loader, which is a deluxe loader, offers bucket linkage. Bucket linkage, you can see we're attaching at the pivot pin here, but we have this double bar linkage in here. What that does is gives assist to help increase the loader cycle times, but it also increases lift. This is helping with geometry and physics again. For them smart people that learn that in school, bucket linkage helps pull the load back. The cylinder is pulling here instead of at this point, so it got better leverage to pull that load back. So that is one of the differences between an L series loader and a DL series loader is bucket linkage. You're going to get a little faster cycle times. You're going to get a little more power when you're curling the bucket. That's basically the difference between an L series, the DL 135 and the L135E is bucket linkage. It's a deluxe loader versus our standard loader. Depending on the models, this is a premium tractor. We're putting the DL series loader on. That is a basic tractor, the E series. We're talking about bucket, tilt and curl, dump and curl functions. Basically that bucket cylinder is just like doing this. It's pulling that load right here. This elbow is pulling just like we're pulling right here. It's easier to do that than try to lift it this way. That's going to take more strength to do it this way, to pull that load this way than curl it with the cylinders this way. That's the difference. It's one of the differences when you're looking at loaders. You need to look at the loader and look at the differences in the loader. Not all loaders are created equal. This is Massey Ferguson, and we got two different series. What about all the different brands in the world? There's things about Massey Ferguson loaders that are unlike any other loader. We have ingreasable galvanized pins that are locked. This pin cannot move. It's tabbed here, so it makes that cylinder or the bushing work on the outside of the pin instead of the pin turning. I've seen a lot of loaders, the pin turns, then you wear out your arms, and then you got a sloppy loose loader. Ingreasable pins. A lot of these loaders have bushings, replaceable bushings in here, but this pin is indexed. Every one of them is indexed to keep it from pinning, and the loader, the part that moves will move on the pin, not the pin inside. That's one of the differences. When you're looking for loaders, make sure you compare as close to apples. A loader lift chart, as you can see here, more load, the lower it is, to the higher you raise is less load. That's standard physics. You cannot change that. That is just one of them laws that I'd forgot from physics class that happens in the real world, and it happens to loaders. The higher you lift a load, the less you can lift. So when you're comparing loaders, make sure you compare maximum lift height and maximum lift capacity together as one component versus looking at lift capacity only. That is the biggest tip that I can tell you about loaders. Now one last thing, we're gonna fire up the 1759 here, is watch this bucket. I'm gonna start it out level on the ground with my bucket level indicator. That's one thing. We're gonna set the bucket level indicator and we're gonna lift this loader from the ground up, and I'm gonna show you one of the things that happens with loaders. To set the bucket level indicator, we've set the bucket level on the ground. You just flip this switch here, put that guide right there, and that's going to tell you when it's flat on the ground. But watch this bucket as we go up. What did the bucket do? It actually tilted back. That is a very dangerous thing if you're new to loaders, is when you raise that loader up, that bucket's going to tilt back on you. So make sure as you raise the loader, you also adjust your bucket. Thank you for tuning in to another Basics from Vahrenberg Implement. I hope that helped you learn some of the basic principles of loader operation and how a loader works, and how to make it easier for you to compare the differences. Thanks for tuning in to another Basics from Vahrenberg Implement. Tune in next time as we go more in depth to teach you more about tractors, tractor operations, and the great products from Massey Ferguson. Thank you.